Sunday Baroque Conversations is made possible by the Friends of Sunday Baroque and is produced at WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Suzanne Bona. Thanks for listening. Don't miss an episode of Sunday Baroque Conversations. Subscribe on Apple, Google, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a review. If you want to find out where you can listen to our weekly show, visit our website, sundaybaroque.org, for a station list and our 24/7 stream. Again, that's sundaybaroque.org. Holly Mulcahy is a violinist. She is currently concertmaster of the Wichita Symphony Orchestra and has previously served as concertmaster for other orchestras, including Chattanooga Symphony and Opera, the Columbus Symphony, Baltimore Chamber Orchestra, and Carmel Symphony. She's also a soloist who balances her orchestral duties with numerous concerto performances across the country. Holly Mulcahy is also founder and secretary of an organization called Arts Capacity, whose stated mission is to help people in need through the power of art, culture, communication, and live music to cope with challenges and develop the capacity to experience change for good. Holly Mulcahy joins me on Zoom to talk about her work with Arts Capacity. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So back in 2015, is it, you went to perform classical music for some 400 inmates at Walker State Prison in Rock Spring, Georgia. And you said you knew you wanted to do more than just swoop in and play for an hour or two and then leave. But let's go back to that first encounter at Walker and how it gradually evolved. What did you expect to accomplish when you first went to that prison?
Well, I didn't know. I had a recital I was planning for a residency at the University of Wyoming. So I peppered the recital works with more what I assumed the prisoners would want to hear, because I just wanted to, get the conversation started.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some solo Bach and then went to a modern piece. I did more solo Bach, went to a modern piece, and I kept this like layer cake of, offerings.
Mm-hmm.
And with each piece, typically when I perform, I don't really want to give like a lecture, this is this composer, this is their dates, this is how you should enjoy something, because I think that takes away the ownership of the musical experience. And I've done that my whole life, is just, what's your experience? Tell me what you think of the music I just played. And so that was new to the prisoners, that concept. And not only did they tell me what they thought, they also shared how important it was that the living composers that I was playing would be kind of privy to their thoughts. So there was a huge value with this kind of bridge that allowed, that the arts allowed between these people who are incarcerated and the outside world. And the conversation was happening right after I got out of the prison performance. I shared with Jennifer Higdon, I shared with Mark Mellitz, I shared with Jim Stevenson, here's how your music impacted these prisoners. And they are so excited that I'm sharing this with you. And so that just started the conversation, and we've been going since.
Talk about some of the maybe more memorable, more meaningful feedback you got from those inmates.
Well, there are several different occasions. The very first time I performed a Jennifer Higdon's String Poetic, which I assumed that it would be more edgy, more not as accessible to them, which was just kind of dumb on my part. I learned a lot, never to assume anybody will enjoy anything or not enjoy anything, just always know that somebody's going to be listening deeply. And one of the prisoners said that it was beyond beautiful, and he felt the presence of his mother who had just passed. It brought him great comfort. The piece just made him kind of reflect on the relationship. She had just passed maybe two months before this recital. And interestingly, one of the guests that I brought in, I'm allowed to bring in about 20 guests after a thorough background check. One of the guests that I had had the same experience. And she was just, shocked isn't quite the right word, but she was just taken that she had the same kind of vision of feeling her own mother, a presence of her own mother. And sharing that with Jennifer was really profound, because composers, when they write, they're not really anticipating this is going to make somebody feel this way. These are such gifts to the composer to give that kind of perspective. Now, another experience, I brought in a piece by Misha Zubko, who's a Chicago composer. And this piece really scared me to bring it in, because there's a lot of pauses in the music. So it's between a cello and violin, and we kind of like talk to each other, and then we pause. And I was kind of like, what are they going to do with that space? Because as a performer, we just want noise, 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 like here's a wall of music. And when there's like silence, it's like, I feel uncomfortable. But it was amazing what they had to share, because one prisoner said, I realized that I don't listen to my daughter when she talks. I need to listen. And I just was astounded by that. And another prisoner said, it reminded me of my mother, who's suffering from Alzheimer's, where she stops in the middle of a sentence and pauses and thinks, and then starts the whole story again. And that was really profound. Another person who was at that recital said it reminded him of his son, who has addiction problems, and he vanishes for long amounts of time. And just that pause kind of left a tension for him, like when are they coming back? So it's really interesting to have 3 or more different values and experiences of the same piece. And it just is informative to me as a performer, how these different takes can be so meaningful for everybody, not just the performer, but everybody to share that experience.
Yeah. How experienced with classical music in general were some of your audience members? Was it typical of, an audience that you might play for outside of a prison?
It wasn't. Funny you should ask. We go in with a survey each time to collect data. Clearly, our very first time, there was very limited exposure to classical music. Some of the comments back we got on the surveys were, I didn't realize I had to come to prison to get this kind of music, or I've never experienced this music until coming to prison. And it's really grown from each time. When we get the survey back, this is not my first experience. This is my 5th experience of live classical music. But what's really interesting is these prisoners seek classical music now on their own time. They have tablet devices, which they can download from what's a kiosk, where they can download certain music. And they go into deep dives of Tchaikovsky and of Glier and composers that I just wouldn't have guessed that they would have gone after. So they're seeking this stuff out actively, and they also have access to the public radio station nearby, which I think is out of just outside of Chattanooga. Public radio station, classical music.
Wow. Who are some of these inmates? Who are they as people, as inmates?
These are fathers, these are sons, brothers, people who had the worst day of their life and are now paying for it. And they, specifically at Walker State Prison, which is a faith and character-based prison, they are working hard to heal themselves so that when they re-enter society, they are a whole man. Mm-hmm. They know where they came from. They know what process they are in right now. And there is an immense amount of hope in their future. And unlike many prisons across the country, there's a lot of support in local churches, synagogues, mosques that come in and mentor these men. And with the arts that the prison allows in, like arts capacity, they're able to access, the humanity side. Many times prisons will focus on just carpet laying or welding skills so that they'll have a job skill when they get out. But unless you tap the humanity side, there's a higher chance for you to reoffend. So it's a really good balancing act that I think that these men are being set up to win. They're being set up to succeed,
Mm-hmm.
and they will be back with their families.
And that sounds like how it dovetails with arts capacity. Could you elaborate on the mission statement, and the actual concrete mission of arts capacity?
By changing for good, that's our last line in our mission. We want them to change, permanently for good. It's more of a we're not really guiding them. We're just giving them the tools, the access, and each one of them will find how to use music and how to use the arts to better themselves, whether it's connecting with a family and using arts as a vehicle to connect. That's a good thing. Or their family members start into music themselves, which is also a good thing because many times families become offenders. Mm-hmm. Children of offenders become offenders. Mm-hmm. It's an awful cycle. So we're hoping that changes for good. We're just giving them the tools of humanity and communication and kind of a social network kind of thing.
Yeah. Now you affirm in your mission too, and I think that this is really key, not just for performing in a prison, but just in general for any performing musician. You say that the focus is on the listener and not on the performers. That you're performing, that you're really focusing on what the prisoners want to hear, not what the artists want to play. You're interested in that long-term benefit to them, not just your own personal gratification. Could you explain that a little bit more? And again, to me, that seems like it should always be what a performer does.
It's really such a dichotomy in my career until the pandemic came, where arts organization would give you, here's the menu, there is no deviation from that. This is what you get. And we know that Beethoven sells the best, so we're going to play a lot of Beethoven, while never having the conversation with people that maybe they would prefer Chopin or whatever. That's a horrible example. But by going in and listening deeply, I've learned this works with audiences on the outside as well. If you start the conversation, find what people are gravitating to, you learn to craft something together. And that's where we've ended up kind of with collaborative performance plans. We've listened deeply by bringing in composers with half-composed pieces and saying, here's 3 minutes of the piece. It's going to be 6. What do you think of it? We brought in a composer from Wyoming, Ann Guzzo, fantastic composer, had 3 minutes of a piece. The prisoners listened to it a few times. They said what they liked. They said what they didn't like. We listened, and she wrote the ending. It had a lot of kind of 3 against 2, like, some rhythms that didn't go together and some harmonies that kind of just a little bit edge. It wasn't super edgy, it was still tonal. But they said, it was a violin duo. We would like the violins to listen to each other. We'd like them to play well together. It's like that's what a huge ask. And the last request was, can the ending sound like a hug? And I was like, how does one do that? Anne ended in a 10th. It's just a beautiful chord. It's just so rich and yummy. It sounded like a hug. So the next 3 minutes she added on, the violins are playing together in sync. They were playing in harmony. So it was a listening, it was a collaborative act. And that helped us, plan the next recital. What do you want to hear after that? And what do you want to hear after that? And it was, it makes it more fun and more meaningful. It builds community.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that this is probably the only or one of the only things in the life of these men that they have a little bit of control and input on.
I am told that pretty much that's the case. When I first came into prison, the first thing out of my mouth before I started playing, will be the invitation that you can speak your mind. Mm-hmm. Your opinion matters. This was the first time that, at least that I was told, that they felt like their opinion mattered and it was asked for. Usually in most prisons that I've been in, prisoners will answer yes, sir, no, ma'am, and not give an opinion and not feel welcome to give an opinion. It's not a place that welcomes that. And music, certainly there are no wrong answers. You can have an opinion. And it's such a freeing feeling to have that.
Yeah. And I imagine it's also probably special that you and your colleagues are coming there to do something for them. Like you're not expecting anything of them except to receive it and maybe give some feedback or opinions, or not if they choose not to. But just the act of giving this to them, giving this experience to them, must also be something that is a rarity for them.
It is a rarity. And I think we've grown our audience, which sounds really weird. It's totally voluntary for them to come.
Mm-hmm.
But we've noticed an increment each time of more men, because they know they're going to feel welcome. They know they're going to feel calm. They know they're going to feel emotional in a good way. And they know that they will be invited, whether they feel like participating or not, to participate and to give ideas. And that's just cool. And for the musicians, I'm very particular about who I bring in with me, because I don't want somebody just coming in and saying, it's the me show, which many musicians, we are trained to do that. Just talk about ourselves and talk about the music we like. But for the musicians I bring in, it's just mind blowing when they listen and just have an equal value from both sides.
Yeah, yeah. Now, some of these inmates, we don't want to sugarcoat this. Some of these are men who are lifers. They're incarcerated in some cases for violent crimes, murder, all kinds of things. What are some of the things that surprised you when you played there? You've talked about a few things that surprised you or things you didn't know beforehand. And what surprised you about some of the people you encountered, not just the inmates, but even like the guards, the administrators? Were there any surprises?
I think every time I come in, it's always a nice surprise. There's never been any negative surprises. Yes, there are murderers, rapists, drug dealers, violent people in these prisons, but trying to push away the judgment and understanding that they are in most of these men are trying to heal. They will be getting out, and they will be our neighbors. Right. Putting that aside, there's a lot of intelligence in there, and really articulate people, really deep listening kind of people. When I bring in a challenging program, they listen 110%. Now, of course, there are no cell phones, and like our audiences in the public right now, they're flipping through during the slow movement on Facebook. I have also done that. But they are like plants that need to be watered. They are dried up plants that are just soaking in every single note. And if it's a dissonant, difficult piece, they find purpose in it that constantly astounds me, because some of the stuff that I will share, I'm kind of trepidatious as bringing it in, like, well, they like this. They find purpose in everything, which I think is a value that most people on the outside can learn from.
Let's talk about Waters Rising. This is a cardboard opera, your collaboration with the Walker State Prisoners and Hunter Museum of Art in Chattanooga. Talk about this project. Talk about its inspiration and how it's come together.
This was, I do this thing where it's like, I'll just say, how hard could it be to produce an opera? Let's do an opera in prison, knowing nothing about opera. I've played in operas, but never put one together. And when it became real, like we're doing this, we've got a date, then it became like, oh gosh, what do we do? Composer Tim Hink, fantastic young American composer who's outside of Chattanooga, and he's becoming very prominent across the country right now, wrote the music. And so I said to him, when's it going to be done? He goes, well, do you have a librettist yet? And I was like, oh, can't you just write the libretto? I mean, I did not know how this worked. I shouldn't be so ignorant, but so we picked a librettist, and then we asked the prisoners 3 very pointed questions to get the story, because it was complete collaboration. And I talked to author Mark Larson, who is kind of renowned. He's written a book called Ensemble, where he's taken hundreds of Chicago actors and built this whole history off of hundreds of actors, made it cohesive. Like, well, we have 400 prisoners. How can we get a cohesive story? So he gave me 3 questions. And the first one was, who were you before you came? Who are you now? And who do you hope to be? And the majority of the questions that we got back from that were, I was a broken man. I was a drug dealer. I was angry. I hated myself. I hated everybody. To, I'm a work in progress. I know I'm not perfect yet, but I'm working hard. To, I want to be a good father. I want to help people. I want to find a spiritual center.
Mhm.
And that was the majority of the answers. So we gave those all to Kendra Leonard of Houston, Texas, a librettist, and she came up with a story called Waters Rising, which, in a nutshell, a hurricane is happening. We've covered global warming too, which is kind of cool. A hurricane is coming, and the waters are rising, and people are starting to panic. People are, getting on the roof, and they're, trying to survive. A man steals a boat to save himself. And in the process of trying to paddle away, the boat capsizes. And he encounters people that he could have helped and people that can help him, including the boat's rightful owner, who helps him turn the boat over and realizes, hey, this is my boat. What are you doing with my boat? And so it basically, the last act of this opera is the two of them start a rescue company the next year where they help together. So it kind of captures the crime, the moment of, I'm a work in progress, to I'm helping people. And it really resonated well. Now, why it's called a cardboard opera is the prisoners at Walker make amazing things out of cardboard. They made me a violin. It looks like a violin. I can show it to you if you want, but it looks like a violin. They made the boat, they made the life jackets, they made the rope, they made all of the sets with help from the Hunter artist who came in and did some teaching. So it's just, that's why we called it a cardboard opera. All the sets are cardboard. You'd never know it.
Wow. Do you want to go get that cardboard violin?
You will not believe this. They even made a little stand for it. The back,
Wow.
I mean, it's just
They put
insane.
varnish on it.
I know. And they use little pinpointers, or what are those little
Push
car,
pins. Push pins.
push pins?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Down to the scroll. I
Wow.
mean, dang.
Is it
And
playable?
no,
Oh, okay.
absolutely not. I forgot what they did. This is like a lot of glue
Oh,
stuck in. um, and they just disassembled some kind of twine or something to create individual strands and then glued them together.
wow.
But the symbolism on the cardboard is it's refuge. It's something that society throws away, and by creating art, they see it as a metaphor. They are cardboard. They've been thrown away. They are recreating themselves in art. So I think they did a pretty decent job on that. It's just a replica.
So, what other projects are you planning? What else is on your wish list?
That's the terrifying thing. It's like, what's next, you know?
Yeah.
Right now, we currently have a violin program going.
Mhm.
And I think it might be appropriate to do a side-by-side concert. We've got 8 violinists studying weekly at Walker right now with eight donated violins, and they're good violins, with an instructor. And they are working so hard, and they're just zipping through books that most people take a year. They've taken a month, and they're very focused and very diligent. So I don't know. We're trying to figure out what's next. I will produce a little recital in the meantime, just to keep the embers burning, and ask them, what do they want next? I mean, certainly we can't turn around and whip another opera out. That took a lot of preparing. I don't know. I don't know what's next, but there will be a lot of listening to them so that we can find what is next.
Mhm.
Interestingly, the opera was asked for about 5 recitals ago by the prisoners. So
Wow. Wow.
it was not just me.
Wow. So, Holly, what do you get out of this?
I get a perspective that most musicians don't get. My music matters. I'm watching it, witnessing it matter. I'm witnessing it save people's lives. I'm seeing how it allows people to communicate, how they can access their own feelings, their own emotional intelligence. I'm watching people like team up together to work on things. Usually in prison, that doesn't really happen. And I'm taking that outside. My audiences in Wichita, for example, my job there not only as concertmaster, but as patron engagement. Patron engagement is my other job. Partner and patron engagement. And so learning how just the human nature of needing music and why it works has kind of shaped how I bring people in, invite people and listen to our patrons of the Wichita Symphony. Not just, you should come to this concert and not ask how it is, what they think. I'm asking them the same questions that I'm asking prisoners. How did that make you feel? Did you like it? Why didn't you like it? What would you rather have heard? Mm-hmm. And really listening instead of just tossing it off. So it's given me a communication variable that I don't think I would have had without going into prison. And incidentally, I'm going to some Kansas prisons starting this month. Wow. So we're branching out.
Wow. And are you kind of starting where you started in Walker with the same kind of approach?
We're probably going to go a little faster now that, we know what we're doing. But what our goal is going to be replicating the data. Replicating what we've proven at Walker State. If we can do that in the Kansas prisons, I think we've got a really strong metric to show why music matters, why it matters to humans, why it matters for the incarcerated population with recidivism, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. What would you want? What's the big takeaway for, everyone from, your fellow musicians to just someone hearing this story, hearing about the work that you've done? What is the big takeaway you would like them to have from hearing about this?
There's so many, but I think the overarching one is that music is a conversation. And in order to have a conversation, you need to listen and respond. And doing that through the arts allows for us to, feel better about it, feel safe about it. Doing anything through the arts is easier than just speaking sometimes, listening and feeling and then producing art, either whether it's a visual or musical, it just works. So it's just a conversation. It's a start.
Well, I've been speaking on Zoom with Holly Mulcahy, violinist, teacher, arts advocate, founder of Arts Capacity. Thank you so much. All the best to you.
Thank you so much.